Hi, my name is Jordan Bush, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about the importance of nature in early childhood settings, whether it's at home or at school. I believe that getting out in nature is very crucial in the early years. So to kind of get this topic started, I wanted to ask you guys, what is your memory of being outdoors in nature as a child? You can pick one, you can pick multiple. It's just something that really comes to your mind and brings you joy. My whole childhood growing up when I was younger was kind of being outside with the neighbors, playing kick the can, playing hide and seek, and rushing back in when my name was called for dinner time, and then scarfing my food down as fast as possible so I can go backside before I had to come in when the street lights turned on. And that was pretty commonplace in my neighborhood. All of us were fortunate enough to be so close-knit and live in a time where people weren't really overly concerned about their kids playing with other kids in the neighborhood without adults being present. So just keep that in mind in the back of your head as we're kind of going through all these slideshows and reflect on the feelings that you feel when those memories pops up. A little bit more about me. Like I said, my name is Jordan Bush. I am currently a nature preschool teacher at the Environmental Nature Center in Newport Beach. I have my associate's degree in early childhood education, and I also have my preschool teacher certificate from Orange Coast College. I'm still currently working on getting my bachelor's degree, and my hope is to transfer to Pacific Oaks, where I can major in early childhood education, but also get a specialization in elementary education with special needs. My past work experiences with children have been at the Harry and Grace Steele Children's Center at Orange Coast College. It was an amazing preschool, big outdoor yard area, but unfortunately it was only part-time. So I left the center to go to Mariners Church Preschool, where I got my first full-time teaching position, and I was there for a year, and then I got the opportunity to hop on board to open up the nature preschool at the Environmental Nature Center. And as you can tell, that this is something that I'm passionate about, so I could not pass up that opportunity. I am currently in the outdoor classroom training, and I'm getting level 1 outdoor specialist training certification. So I've been able to visit the College of the Desert and kind of see their program and how they work, so I can implement that in my school and just bring over some new ideas for my director. I just wanted to go back in context a little bit and give you guys some background as to why kids prefer to stay indoors. So there's a book written by Richard Louv. He's written a couple of books about the importance of nature in early childhood years, and specifically in this one called The Last Child in the Woods. A child was quoted saying that they preferred to stay indoors because that's where all the electrical outlets were. And then I did a little bit more research, and I found that the Center for Integrative Brain Research at Seattle's Children's Hospital did a study on mice, and they were exposed to the sound and light stimulated kind of from TV for about 6 hours a day. And that is generally the equivalent of what most children spend sitting in front of the TV daily. And then they tracked their brain waves throughout the exposure of that TV time over a periodical time. And they found that many of those changes in the mice's brains would suggest that you have a brain that's wired up at a more baseline excited level, meaning that it takes a lot of effort to stimulate that child because they're so exposed to the changes that happen all the time on the TV, and so they're constantly being overstimulated, and their brain is physically being rewired to expect that stimulation all the time. So that's why I said at the bottom point, therefore, your TV equals brain being more stimulated and excited, which kind of causes them to become bored, common term that you guys hear when children are not in front of a screen, whether it's TV or iPad, when they're often exposed to it, versus kids who are minimally exposed to it. The next slide talks about the risk of being detached from nature. Children obviously are more at risk of becoming obese due to a lack of exercise and just being able to move their body and get out of the house. If parents aren't carefully monitoring what their children are watching, they could be exposed to more violent behaviors on the TV screens or on video games, which can cause them either to embody kind of that person that they're watching and act out those violent scenes or behaviors, or they can become fearful from seeing violent behaviors such as on the news or something like that. Also, children who aren't exposed to nature can develop a fear of nature just because it's something that's so unknown, and so when they're finally exposed to it, it's kind of just this big land where in their mind, maybe like my daughter said when I took her to the nature center the first time, she was like, is a cheetah gonna get me? And that really hit me hard, and I stopped and I was like, wow, I'm not getting her outdoors enough. Like, we're in Newport Beach, no, a cheetah's not gonna get her. And I explained to her, no, cheetahs live in Africa, they don't live here in this type of the woods, in this type of area. This is the woods. The animals that you would find here would be coyotes at night, squirrels, maybe skunks, lizards and crawfish. But her fear was real, and it made me realize that we haven't really been exposed to nature that much because we do live in a suburban area, and so it became really important to me to make it a mission so that fear would disintegrate and disappear and that she would feel comfortable in an outdoor setting. They also don't have an increased interest to understand the connection that we personally have to nature and the impact that we can have on it. So when things like climate change are being discussed, maybe when they're preteens or teenagers or adults, they're kind of distuned from it because they didn't learn early on the deep value that comes from being out in nature and taking care of nature. And then something that I kind of want to dabble in is doctors are found to be prescribing more behavior modifying drugs for ADD and ADHD for young children. I'm not saying that this is because kids are not going out in nature. These are just the findings that have been found. And the correlation that it has to nature is that children who are exposed more to nature feel more sense at ease, feel relaxed. Nature is very therapeutic, so therefore there's not that much of a need for behavior modifying drugs for ADD and ADHD. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth about that later. But those are just some of the risks that come with being detached from nature. Nature deficit disorder. So this is a metaphorical diagnosis that is, quote unquote, the price paid for our physical disconnect from the natural world. So this was a phrase coined by Richard Louv in his book Vitamin N talks about it. The specific side effects that that are experienced from nature deficit disorder are diminished use of senses, so sight, smell, touch, taste, feeling, attention difficulties, so children are unable to hold their attention for certain activities for shorter periods of time. Obviously obesity, like I talked about earlier, due to the lack of exercise, and higher rates of emotional and physical illness. This is not a medical diagnosis. To remind you guys again, it is just a metaphorical diagnosis to kind of show the impact that being disconnected from nature is having on us and on our children. How to combat nature deficit disorder. Go outside and experience nature therapy. Studies suggest that nature may be useful in therapy and can occasionally replace medications or behavioral therapy. I say that because all diagnoses are different. I am not a doctor, nor is Richard Louv, but it has been shown that people who are in nature more have more of a sense of calmness and can just be at ease in the natural world. Children benefit from nature therapy cognitively, spiritually, and biologically, and so can adults. So it's never too late to kind of make that reconnection with nature. So it's also important for adults as well. Nature is inherently therapeutic, from the scent of the flowers to obviously hearing the singing songs of a bird. Nature therapy. So the things that nature therapy can offer you are sensory benefits. Like it kind of touched on, you kind of lose hone on skills of practicing your five senses. So sensory benefits, the smell of lavender or white sage, stopping and closing your eyes and listening to the sounds that you hear around you, and trying to identify what kind of animal you're hearing. Is it a squirrel? Is it a bird? Is it a lizard? Being able to put your toes in the mud and squish the mud between your toes. Nature therapy also offers inspiration, so you can kind of clear your head and get out of your head a little bit and slow down to where you're not worried about doing X, Y, and Z on your list of to-dos today, and kind of just take a breather and just really look for inspiration within yourself, and come to a more sense of clarity if you are confused about certain things that are going on in your work life, your personal life, or stuff like that. Nature offers risk and challenge that can't be offered indoors or in a classroom. We want children to develop a healthy risk-taking ability, knowing that they're in tune with their bodies and they know what risks that they can take and which risks that they cannot take. And like I said, again, calmness, improvement in visual sense, fostering listening, not learning, my bad, enhances the sense of touch, enhances the sense of taste and smell, and I kind of already touched on that in the first part of this slide. The benefits of being in nature: increased brain performance. So it's been shown in studies that there's higher scores on tests of attention and memory when people are outdoors in nature daily. Like I said, fewer symptoms of ADD and a better ability to focus on tasks for a longer period of time, and that's just due to the fact that they're not kind of being sensory overloaded out in nature, so their synapses to the brain aren't being fired as much as often as if they were in front of a screen. So that builds a better attention maintenance and a greater sense of self-discipline, because we have to realize what we can and what we cannot do in nature, and the impact that our actions have on nature. Better motor skills such as coordination, balance, and agility, and that can come from running on the dirt trails to climbing on rocks. Children's play is more imaginative because they have to find their toys and kind of make them if they don't have access to them, like making fairy soup in the dirt. So taking a stick and just digging in the dirt, and then you find these little rocks and you're like, oh my gosh, this is fairy soup, So it kind of fosters children's creativity in the sense that they have to kind of keep themselves entertained, and in order to do that they have to make something to entertain them, which is a great skill to have later on in life and even now. Like I said, nature is therapeutical, so it does reduce stress just because we are turned off to all the things that we have to do generally when we're in nature, or as turned off from everything as you can be, meaning electronics, screens, stuff like that. It enables children to hone in on observational and listening skills as they observe the natural world. So like I said, they're able to sit there and listen to what sound is being presented at the time. Is it a bird? Is it the stream running? Is it the wind rustling the leaves? Stuff like that. That is really gets them to pay attention to the small little details. They develop a positive regard for others because they realize the impact that teamwork can bring to the group as they work together on certain tasks, and they have an interest in preserving nature and its diversity. So where do plants come from? Where does our food come from? It comes from gardening. It comes from the earth, and to be able to see that is amazing and definitely very